If I don't know your brand story or your brand essence or your positioning or who your customer is, like I want a deep knowledge of that. I want to know you. I want to know your product so that when I'm making that logo, that's all infused in your logo and in your colors. Again, like I want to make sure that the feeling of the colors is hitting the brand essence, your product. So it's so much more than just, so much more than just picking some colors. Everything will branch off of that brand positioning and form a brand map for your services and your products. And all of that stuff will go onto your website and just make your brand so much more polished.
Welcome to the You're Doing It Wrong podcast. I'm your host, Christian. Today I've got Rebecca joining me to talk about design and branding and, whatever else comes along. But Rebecca, thanks for joining me. This is a topic that I really enjoy. I don't consider myself a designer, but I've loved to dabble in it. We'd love to hear your thoughts, being an expert in the field. So, thanks for joining.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here today and always happy to talk about design and branding and all things that go along with that.
Yeah, give us a good background.
Yeah, I have, quite a varied career. I'm now in my 50s and I've done a lot of different things, working at everything from startups to agencies. And I've worked in New York and LA. Now I'm in Nashville. I'm actually a self-taught designer, so that's kind of interesting as well, for a lot of people out there who, who wonder how you get started. There's many avenues, but anyways, I'll let you kind of ask the questions.
That's all right. Yeah. So what made you decide to go into design?
Well, when I first started out, really didn't know. There were a couple different things I wanted to do. I was in school in New York City, and I thought I might go into being a stylist or working in a gallery. I definitely knew I wanted to do something creative, and eventually, I did I did know that design was the thing that I wanted to mainly do. It's just hard when you first start out. You're trying different things and trying to figure out where you're going to land. And I started at the bottom. Started at a startup, a music startup called Sonic Net, and I was just doing banners and started from there. Yeah, I started really at the bottom as an intern. I worked at magazines. I worked in a magazine in New York City, and just knew that I had a love for design back in 1994. Just when the web was getting popular and, kind of got scooped up into all of that. And it was really fun working at a startup, eventually helping to build Sonic Net, which was one of the first music websites out there, and eventually bought up by MTV, if anybody remembers MTV. So we were bought up by them, and eventually MTV for a while, and yada, yada, yada. And then my career kind of took off.
But did you start mainly doing internet-based design, or did you start in print as well?
That was mainly my first foray into design. As I said, starting out as banners, and I didn't know anything at the time. I was just designing banners for SonicNet, and not really even knowing anything about branding, and just trying to learn all of the software at the time. That's when Photoshop had just come out, Photoshop, and that was mainly what we used. So I self-taught myself how to use all that. And I actually ended up getting demoted at one point to just doing production because they had hired another designer who understood branding because I was doing every
Right.
single banner differently. They all looked different. And then she came in and she started making them all look the same and implementing branding and but that I was 24 at the time. So I started to learn and eventually I just read a lot of books and just learning from my peers that I was working with, and then uh, yeah, just from there, just started to self teach myself. And then eventually, HBO, then worked there for quite a while, and then got into an ad agency. Many probably took me a few years to get there, and that is where you really hit the ground running. There's so much that you learn at an ad agency, and that's
Mm.
what I recommend for people who are just starting out. Get yourself into an ad agency because that's where you're going to just learn so much. Mhm.
So, give us maybe your top two or three highlights of things that you've worked on
Recently or in general?
in
Just in general.
general. What were two really
Um,
fun things to work on?
well, so I went on to, so now I work in pharmaceuticals. So I work in the pharmaceutical, which has been a wonderful job to have for the past, I've been doing it for like 20 years. Um,
Oh,
but pharmaceuticals are not that exciting. What was exciting was back in New York when I went on to work at a startup called Get Music. So after MTV, we did a new startup called Get Music. Again, this was like in the probably 1999. So everything was so
right.
new back then. We would have artists come in to the office. So I got to meet a lot of great musical artists, and they would come in. And but what was interesting at that time was I became the creative director of Get Music. So I had a team at that time of probably 10 art designers, but we designed the whole website from scratch. And so that was one of the most fun that was one of the funnest projects that I ever worked on
Right.
because the environment was exciting. It was a startup, and we were designing the website from scratch. And it was just an exciting time. The team felt really close. We were all in it
Yeah.
together, and that
And
was
web
exciting.
design then was a lot different than web design now, as far as the
It
color schemes, and it's probably really dark and
the color scheme was I don't know. I had one of the we had a couple different designers that were chipping in to like do the design, and then we had
right.
our CEO choose, and it was everything was willy nilly. Then it was such a cobbled together, and I think the homepage was done in Flash. I don't know if you remember
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Flash.
Yes, I remember Flash.
And
Yeah,
the homepage was done in Flash so that he wanted it to be really interactive, but it was
yeah.
also, we were so ahead
It
of
was
our
a
time.
great program, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it's gone the wayside.
Mm,
Anyways, yeah, I liked working in the music industry because there was always so many, there was a lot of exciting projects going on. Now I push Botox, so
yeah.
not as
Not quite as
exciting,
exciting.
but it has given me, security. Being in pharmaceutical industry is there's a lot of security being in that industry because it's
Mm.
very continuous.
Now
Yeah.
you've gone out on your own and had multiple clients and worked with
Mhm.
some up and coming, startups and new companies. So, is there any lessons learned about people that are companies, new companies trying to start their brand? Something you would give them advice what not to do?
Yeah. So, the thing, like a lot, when I Botox, obviously, they have so much money. So it's great. We can do whatever we want, where, we have a ton of money to spend. So everything's done right. We put a lot of time into the brand guidelines. We take hours and hours to go over strategy. There's a lot of money there. Whereas for a small business, that's where I would say, they have trouble. Small businesses have a hard time spending the money. They don't want to spend a lot of
Mm,
money on branding or design because it's hard for them to spend money and that's I think where a lot of small businesses go wrong, not spending some time and money on setting themselves up correctly with their branding, because branding really sets the tone for your business, so that when people come to your website or they see your materials, everything feels cohesive. If it's cohesive and polished, then they really can trust your brand. But if your colors are all over the place and I literally know brand companies that have two different logos going on, one on their sign
yeah.
above their business and one on their business card, because somewhere along the way somebody wasn't keeping an eye on the consistency. Believe me, I've seen it. And
I
it,
confess I've had that as well. I did that for a business. We kind of changed logos halfway through, and we never took down the sign, but that had the old logo on. But yeah,
yeah, and you really, so, you have to spend the time. I did work with a smaller company in LA, and it was so nice for them to spend a little bit of money upfront, where we did do, there a branding. We did a brand workshop, and I spent the day with them, getting to know their business. And out of that, came so many branding elements for them to get them set up. Everything from their logo to their color palette to their brand story. I helped with their brand story and their positioning of the business, the strategy. And, from that one day, they had a whole set of tools to ground them. They had a brand map that then would ground them
mm,
for all of the future things that would spin off of that. It cost them. I'm going to just throw a number out just so people kind of know. Like, for this mid-sized company, that cost them 20K to do all of those elements.
yeah,
But here it is 6 years later, isn't later, and I still go back to their website. They've got the same logo, they've got the same colors, got everything's been set up for them to have an anchor. Um, and it just helps the customer who's going there, to feel like I can trust this brand. They know what they're doing. They've got a polished voice. Everything looks the same. Whereas if you go to I don't know if you go to someone's Instagram page and all their socials are done in different colors, all the fonts are different, and you just feel like it's a cacophony of chaos. So you don't really trust
yeah,
that brand as much, right? Because you're like, well,
yeah.
if they can't get it together, how am I going to trust them with my business? So it's so important to just have everything consistent. So that's what I
Yeah,
help
so it's a
customers with.
long term investment, not a short term sort of thing. I think especially when you talk about building trust with your consumer or other businesses, if you're B2B. Um,
And it helps
yeah,
you too, as a business owner, to also put a stake in the ground as to who you are, so that you don't start to water down your business. Again, I've worked with a nonprofit. Their name was Protection of the Educational Rights of Kids. But then they started to veer off, and then they wanted to do projects that helped veterans or helped uh, firefighters. So some people started to get confused. Well, the name of your company is Protection of the Educational Rights of Kids, but you have projects that deal with veterans or firefighters. And so people got really confused as to who they were. They really needed to really update they really needed to either update their brand strategy and their logo, or they needed to stay within their strategy, and only focus
yeah,
on kids and their rights, not firefighters' rights. And
Yeah.
veterans rights. So, it helps you to ground you in your own strategy. What is our
Mm,
positioning? Let's stay within that positioning. And so it helps you as a business owner to know who you are.
that's a good point there. Um,
I hope I'm
it's
rambling.
yeah, no, it's a good one. I I think people don't value, and like you said, when small businesses don't have a lot of spare money around, um, but you have to
Mhm.
kind of choose, okay, what am I going to invest in with this little bit of money, especially early on, and I think understanding branding and that positioning is very important, and very maybe undervalued, uh, and maybe that's why you know small businesses sometimes have a hard time. And right, like you said, you're trying to earn the trust when you don't have a lot of background in the industry. You're new. How do you build that trust? And branding is probably one of those ways.
I understand too. It's hard for the small business owner to part with their money. My
Mm,
mother has a retail business in Connecticut, and to this day, she, her she I see her point of view. It's very hard to set aside that chunk of cash to go towards branding and design. But I do try and work within people's budgets. It's there are levels of how deep we can go with your branding and your strategy and your design. I mean, there is three element. There's different elements, um, and different levels that we can do so that you're not spending 20,000. Maybe you just have 1,000 to spend. We work within that, but the more time you can spend, the better,
yeah.
obviously.
So we'll kind of move to the side here, on since the podcast is you're doing it wrong. So there's been some epic failures, I think, lately. One, lots of controversy not too long ago was Jaguar's rebrand. And I was
Oh,
reading a bit on this one, and possibly they felt with slowing sales that they maybe needed a radical change, but maybe it was too radical, and I'm not really sure. And as some of the people have pointed out, we're not really sure what they were trying to sell there. So, give us your thoughts on that one.
yeah. I looked at that one when everyone was talking about it, and I just was very confused about who their target market was because it was a
Mm,
total shift from like this luxury brand to I mean, it was very confusing and it really put me off. And I don't know what they were trying to do there. I think that they must have gotten in a creative director, who was just like, let's break the mold. Let's do something really. I mean, I've sat in these meetings where, it's like, let's think out of the box, and you put up all these concepts, hundreds of concepts on the wall, and they just love to, sometimes they just forget about, I think, the audience. I mean, and they're so focused
mm,
on this out of the box concept. And I think these creatives just totally missed the mark. They forgot who their audience was. I don't, I
yeah,
don't know.
I don't think they probably scared off the people that would buy a Jaguar, and I don't think
For,
they attracted anybody new. So yeah,
for sure.
but
Yeah.
maybe they
I would,
felt like they had to do something. I don't know.
yeah. Talking about brand fails, I think that, you know, it's the small business owner that really also is where the brands fail a lot because they don't take the time to put in just a little bit of time up front, for their
Mm,
brand. The big brands, for the most part, I think do a pretty good job. They have a lot of money to spend. But again, I think for the small business owner, it's consistency is key, and just spend a little bit of time and money to have bring someone in who can help you just polish it all up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you made a good point, and I've got a kind of a segue here, but a good point about staying in your lane, and I have an issue with the Tesla Cybertruck because I kind of feel like it's almost ruined the brand to come up with this insane truck that doesn't work well and is really kind of lowering the value, I think, of the Tesla name. So it's, it's like,
So
people, and I think I looked up some other branding fails, and it was like Colgate came out with, tried to do frozen foods, I think, at one point. It's like, what is a toothpaste maker doing with frozen foods? And it's like, yeah, this was back in the 80s, apparently. So, and it did not go well at all, obviously. But, it's kind of going, know what your brand is about. And,
right,
and this is kind of
right.
where I'm going with the Cybertruck. I feel like, the rapport that Tesla had built with its customers, like probably they look at the Cybertruck and go, that's, or at least I do go, what is that? And you know,
Yeah.
I probably wasn't going to buy a Tesla before, but now I'm like, you know, why would I want to buy something, a car from a company that made that thing? It's like, so, um, I think it's important to, the look at it, and it's I think it's just not functional. They say it's so massive, it can't
Mm.
turn, you can't park it, like what is it good for? Absolutely nothing, it's uh, so I don't know. I
Well,
think it's just trying to be so different, like you say, trying to be so different and out of the box.
I mean, I guess sometimes that can work. Maybe every once in a while that being out of the box can work. And that's, when creative really works. I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but then sometimes, you have to take those chances, right? And then sometimes they fail. But I
Hmm.
I, I would imagine a lot of times that they work. But yeah, the Cybertruck is pretty ugly. And there's a woman here locally who has one and wrapped it in pink and also has pink
uh,
tires. It's so ugly, and that's definitely
well,
not helpful. I don't know. It's just so different looking from the sleekness of all the other Teslas.
yeah, yeah.
And I
So
wonder if he hurt the brand. I don't know. He's. I wonders how some people, he kind of did a little switcheroo there on people about a year ago, and so I'm wondering,
yeah,
but
yeah.
anyways,
I won't say too much about him. I don't.
I
I
still
kind
like him.
of
I mean, I love Elon. I
he's an interesting character, and
controversial, controversial for
yeah, and I think with people like that, and like, I mean, you look at him as Steve Jobs was this way, and I didn't like Steve Jobs, but there were all these people that were, these kind of showmen, um, and in business they're able to get investors, and they're able to get these people, and so they have that presence and that showmanship. And do they always, uh, give the right product or whatever? You might not always love what they do, but obviously they're good at doing what they do because they're able to build these massive companies. And I spoke with someone before about SpaceX. To me, that's probably his biggest success. Elon
Mhm,
Musk is SpaceX. Just
mhm,
what they've been able to accomplish much more than Tesla. And he's built a brand around it, right? So, and even with Tesla, like he built a brand around that. So Tesla, not only with the cars, you have the charging stations, but then the home um, batteries and all that sort of stuff. And they've done well, and I think both SpaceX and Tesla have done well with their branding. To be consistent and sleek, and when they go into something new other than the Cybertruck, that it's something you go, oh well, you want to take a look at. You go, oh well, they're a known quantity. I'd take a look at that. But yeah,
I think brands are so strong that he's able to take that chance with the truck. The brands are so strong, and it was a
mm,
chance, and maybe it will fizzle, but luckily his brands are so strong that it was okay to do that.
yeah, yeah. And I think Jaguar, I think the brand was probably struggling to begin with, and that's maybe more of the
Yeah.
problem. But being an iconic brand so old, it's yeah,
That one just went so far left, just
mm,
so far that I just think it left everybody, and it was with the whole brand that I mean, it was encompassed their whole brand. So now the whole brand is just sunk, I feel like. Whereas Elon just focused on this one car. It wasn't like he messed with the overall brand.
yeah,
The brand is still there, the technology brand, the coolness factor, you know, but Jaguar totally changed their brand essence. Like they used to be
mm.
luxury and they're what? Now I don't know what they are.
Yeah. I don't know what they're marketing towards now. Yeah,
Just wacky.
yeah.
I don't know.
uh,
Any,
s-
anyways.
anyways, um, so you did some website design, and I've done some website design, and I hate doing
Mhm.
website design. Um, but these days, there's tools for like Wix and others that basically will build out an AI tools that will build out a website for you so quickly and actually really nice and really good. And I guess where do you see design or and designers playing in that space when you've got all these AI tools kind of taking
Yeah.
over?
Yeah, so I'm when I I love Squarespace, so I'm thinking Squarespace kind of falls in with the same category as Wix.
Hmm.
So I use that. I mean, I started out also coding. I've done some code on the back end trying to build websites, and oh my God, I hate doing that. Obviously, I left it to the web programmers eventually, but I still do like to build websites, so I love having Squarespace. It
Hmm.
has made it a lot easier for me. But I think it's still difficult for for someone who if you're a business owner and you want to build a website, I think it still could be. Obviously, you can go in there and do it because they have templates now. So if you're a business owner and you want to take that plunge and just build your website yourself, yes, you can go in there and do it. But again, for if you want that, leg up and you want it to be really professional and you want to have, someone, an expert that's been doing it for years who just has that deep knowledge is going to really help you organize that website so that you have a nice content flow. So when I help someone, not only am I'm doing so much more. There's a lot of thinking that goes into using a tool like Squarespace. There's everything from the branding to the logo to the content organization that I just think that having someone like a web designer is really going to help that business owner have a leg up and just have a better website. But obviously, anyone can go in and do it. But I don't think these tools are going to overtake the job of a web designer. I mean, even AI, like I've used some of the AI in, I think Photoshop has a little AI, but even trying to use that, like you need you need to have your strategy first. Otherwise, your AI is just going to take you down their road. That's why it's still helpful to bring in a designer. So I don't think the designer's job is going to go anywhere because you still need that design thinking and strategy and planning. to help you build that website. Obviously, you can do it yourself, but I can add, or a designer can add so much more value.
Yeah. I've used some of the AI sites that can do logos and things, and
I haven't
uh,
used them. How does that working for you?
uh, well, I will say that ChatGPT did a lot better than the logo design AI sites. So that
Oh,
was very interesting. Um,
I have to try
yeah,
that. I mean,
but
I've used GPT for my copywriting,
the image generation from ChatGPT is actually really good.
oh,
Um,
Lord.
so yeah, yeah,
I'll
much
have
much
to
better than I expected.
say, okay, I'll have to try it. I'll have to try that. I haven't tried it for creating images. I've used the Photoshop one, but I
Hmm.
have like a specific concept, or strategy that I'm trying to hit. Like, and so the details need to be so perfect for me. Um, and I've found that I have to really sit there and work with it over, it takes time to get the
Hmm.
right image that I need.
But it's just a JPEG. So you then have to take that and retrace it back in design tool and yeah, and then actually turn that into a proper logo and stuff like that. But it does give you a really good starting point. We can,
Yeah.
but yeah, I tried a few of the other logo design sites, AI sites, and it was pretty terrible. but that one, but yeah, the ChatGPT surprisingly worked pretty well. And I'm not here to promote ChatGPT; it's just it worked. Um, yeah, it's interesting.
How you did your logo.
It was the starting point for the logo. Yes.
Nice. It's great that those tools are out there. And if you have the time to do it and you want to have fun, it's great. These tools are great. And they definitely help startups, all these tools. There's so many
Mm.
tools available now to get people up and running for sure.
Yeah, but as you know, like trying to pick the colors, was days and days. Like, do I put color or do I just go black and white and whatever? You know, that's some of the hardest. You ask somebody the hardest part when you're building a building is getting people to decide on the color of the carpet. You know, so
So that's interesting, that you mentioned that because even something as simple as like picking out the color palette, kind of going back to what I do, even with a color palette, there's a whole process that we go through and color god, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, there's a color process because colors mean different things to different people. And
mm,
so, we actually try to match back the colors to your brand essence. So if your brand is fun, energetic, and playful, definitely don't want to go with like dark, muted greens, purples, and reds. We want to go with probably something a little bit brighter. And so we will spend time just picking a whole process of different color palettes to go with your brand and making sure that they map back to the emotional feeling that people get when they see your brand, um, so that they tune into that emotional essence. So even that is like a chunk of the process that I can pull out, and we can actually spend a week on just the color palette,
mm,
which, a
oh
lot of people just want to like, okay, I pick red, blue, and green, whatever, those are going to be my colors.
yeah.
But
But yeah, they go. My favorite color is purple or something like that. So yeah, and it's like, well, what does that convey? What are we trying to do?
second day,
Um,
right?
so
So
you've started. You've been around design long enough to see trends, change and move, and so where do you say design is heading in the future? Is there any change in that you have to think about that go, hey, what we did a few years ago, it's not really, I don't know, in fashion or whatever, but where are the kind of the trends going, or is it going backwards? What do you think?
So, I mean, just off the top of my head, I don't really follow the trends as much as I used to. I'm so involved right now, knee deep in Botox. That's the brand that I work on right now is Botox. I work for AbbVie Pharmaceuticals. So I'm always just really focusing on consistency of the brand and making sure that that brand stays consistent. So the only thing that I can just say that we're doing now that's a little different, like, a few years ago, we would use a lot of shadows. Um, Now we're just doing a lot more flat and simplified artwork. We're just keeping everything very simple and clean. So I will say that I don't really follow a lot of the trends at the moment because like I said, I'm so focused on Botox. Um, if I am working on like if I'm working on a side project, like I have a couple side projects going on, if I am looking for inspiration, one of the things that I tend to look at is color trends. I think that,
Hmm.
I do tend to look at like what's the hot color for this year. That usually has a big influence on some of the design that I'm doing. Um, I'll look at some logos, kind of seeing where those are going. And again, it just seems like more simplified logos and making sure that in logos that are getting kind of fattened up, the lines aren't as thin. They're stronger so that logos can be seen at all sizes. If you're using a logo on a banner, it's going to be very small. So you need to make sure that it's a solid logo, can be seen at really large sizes or small sizes. So I've noticed some of the logos they're getting beefed up and simplified. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say now with banners, well, and websites. So you have, your social media pages and YouTube. Every company's got a YouTube and stuff, but all the different sizes that you have to cater for, right? So you have to
Hmm.
have, some sort of, page header block
Oh,
one, then your standard logo, and then it's like all these 10 different, backgrounds and other types
right.
of, ways to use your brand. And it's like, man, that's a lot of work
It's
for
a
people
lot of
to kind
work.
of make
Yeah,
it work across all those
imagine.
different formats.
Yeah, there's all these different formats now. Your logo can't just be that one logo. When I do a logo for the client, we've got multiple kinds of logos: the horizontal logo, the vertical logo, the one for Instagram, the one that's going to go on the side of a bus. You've got to have different. Sometimes it has the tagline, sometimes it loses the tagline, sometimes it's just the mark, right? So,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, that's something that's definitely different than it was years ago. Yeah, that's a good point that you brought up. And it's a lot
Yeah.
of work,
So I
I'm sure.
know. Yeah,
Oh God, I gotta have a
those of us
logo
that
for this.
have done it, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to
And you
separate
have
it all out into parts. Yeah,
Yeah, you have to make sure that it's easily viewable. And that's why I say like having a nice mark, something really solid so that it's when you reduce the size, it's still really legible. Hmm.
yeah, and recognizable, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah.
across, yeah, all those different formats.
It
Yeah,
would be, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for the business owner that's just doing a startup. There's so many different things to think about now because of digital, you know.
yeah. It used to be you just designed a business card, and that
Right.
was like, yep,
Right.
I've got my business card and a little logo, and that's all you really needed. But
Yeah.
now, you know, it's okay. Well, what is my web gonna be? What are the social medias gonna be like, and different
Yeah.
things there, and so
That's
yeah,
why people
and
need
now even
designers.
video.
Yeah. That's why you need designers. I don't feel like we'll ever lose a job because, or be AI will take it over because at least I haven't found that to happen yet. We're still very needed.
Mm. So I guess if people wanted to start, if they've got a small business and they wanted to hire a designer, what tips would you give them?
For
Where to
finding
look, or for
find
finding
someone,
one,
yeah.
or what's the best place to put their money, as far as if they don't have a lot of money to spend, where would you say best place to spend it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I mean, first to find a designer, yeah, it's really hard. I wouldn't suggest. I think there's a site called, what is it, Upwork? I don't know. But I would
Oh yeah,
maybe Behance would be good. Behance
oh
has a
yeah,
lot of great designers. I actually, when I was looking for some designers to work with me, I went on to Behance, and that's how I found a really great designer that worked with me for a few years. That way, you can look at their work um, looking at their websites and their portfolios and meeting with them. And obviously, if you have a budget, it's nice to let them know upfront what your budget is. And, we could start the thing to start with that I would start with is one of the clients that I worked with is is to do a small brand. I like to do a brand workshop, but you could always just do a shorter meeting just so that I can understand your brand. And then out of that, we'll spin off at least your logo, your color palette, your positioning. Like, you really should have some strategy and positioning. And, and then we can develop a small style guide. I mean, you could probably have all of these things done. I really, I'd like to say at least for a minimum of 10K, 10 to 20K, you can get a nice solid grounding. And then all of those elements, the designer will put together a style guide for you with all those elements and all the different logos and all the different formats that you need. And then you can use those just moving forward so that you can stay consistent. That's where I would start. That's just the beginning. I mean, I've just been doing this for so many years that I'm at the point that I know that there are so many other elements, and like, I want to hit the brand strategy. I want to do the positioning. I want to know your brand story. I want to do all those elements for you. And that takes time. So I guess if you can get some, young junior designer to just do a logo for you, and boom, you'll have it. But that's all you'll have.
yeah. I think the strategy is the good one, like you said. We're an understanding. A lot of times it's good for the business to understand, where they are positioning themselves, because probably a lot of times they haven't really figured that out. So yeah, I haven't thought about it. So if you're helping guide getting that out of them, while you're doing these branding sessions, then it's
Right,
there's more business um, relevance by doing that than just having a logo, right? So they're
right.
establishing their own business strategy as part of that branding.
A part of that branding, right, right. And then all of that, if we establish the strategy and the positioning, and then we craft a brand story, even all of that can be used on your website. And your website is so important. That's your face to your consumers, your customers. And we can put that brand story on your site. And, you know, that way, all of that work that's done up front, the brand strategy, the brand story gets put on your site. And then from that, we can develop your logo, your color palette. If I don't know your brand story or your brand essence or your positioning or who your customer is, like, I want a deep knowledge of that. I want to know you. I want to know your product so that when I'm making that logo, that's all infused in your logo and in your colors. Again, like, I want to make sure that the feeling of the colors is hitting the brand essence, your product. So it's so much more than just, so much more than just picking some colors. Everything will branch off of that brand positioning and form a brand map for your services and your products. And all of that stuff will go onto your website and just make your brand so much more polished to you as a business owner and to your customers. And then all of those elements get rolled out into your digital banners, your emails, your advertising. It's so we put that stake in the ground. So it's not just us making pretty pictures. We're really helping our clients with their business and their business strategy. I didn't know that when I started out as a designer, honestly. Like, I thought I was just going to be making pretty pictures, when I first, because as I said, I did not go to design school. I just got thrust into it, and I learned all these things. Once I worked at an ad agency, you learn these processes that you go through with a business, and you take these small steps with them to learn about their business, learn who their customers are. We would do focus groups with the customers to learn who they were, what their desires were. And then all of that just infuses that logo, that little logo, to the website, to their marketing materials, to everything we do for the customer. Yeah. So there's so much more than pretty pictures that we do.
Good. I was going to say, and don't get started on fonts.
Oh, you don't even get me started on fonts. Oh my God. All the various fonts that got to
Yeah.
hire a designer, spend a little money on a designer who knows what they're doing. I've worked in the business for 20 years now. There's just so much that's like deeply ingrained that, it seems easy now. It used to, I used to futz over designs. It would take me forever. Now I can whip them out so much easier. So it also pays for a client to have someone who has experience, because you're paying for the experience as well.
Yeah.
Someone might, it's a shorter amount of time for me to do something than it might be for someone who's new to the business.
So yeah, just tell us what else you're working on outside of Botox.
In addition to my side job, in addition to my main job at AbbVie, I am working on, I have my own website, RebeccaHeineman.com. And on the side, I do a little consulting. And one of the things I want to do now is give back to designers that are just starting out, or businesses that do want some consulting. So I do that on the side, and more of that information is on my website. And the other side project I'm working on is doing a online branding and building your business course. So hopefully that will be out in the next year on my website. And then another little side project where I'm just setting some seeds is to I want to do like an intimate gathering of women that want to give wisdom to other women, to help women who are balancing both career and family at the same time, to kind of help them either get their careers kicked off and how to balance career and being a mom at the same time. So I'm working on like a little intimate gathering of women, kind of like a little
Is it kind of
conference
like
that
a
we do,
mentorship?
kind of like a mentorship, bringing women that are, women like myself that have been doing this for years. How do you balance motherhood and your career at the same time? Bringing them together. So hopefully we'll have a conference once a year, bringing experts together in that area. So that's a little
Nice.
side project. Let's see how that comes together. I mean, I feel like that, right now there are so many women that are trying to decide, do I want to stay in my career and not become a mom? How do I balance motherhood and a career? And I just want women to know that it can be done.
It's a good point. I think it's even for guys, it's getting harder and harder because the expense of of housing and everything else than to have kids. It's and if someone has to take a pay cut, to have the kids, if you need two incomes, to support it, it's a difficult time right now. I think, especially with inflation, both around the world is since COVID has gone through the roof. Probably people that were on the fence about having kids. I don't know which way they'd jump. If they look how expensive it is, and to
And it's
live
sad.
and have them.
Like, it's sad for women. I hear so many young women now talking about how they don't want to have children because it will interfere with their career and giving up on that. And it's just been the most wonderful thing that's ever come into my life. I mean, I made my career my focus until I was 38, 39. I didn't have Ethan until I was 43. Thank God I was able to have Ethan at 43. But it's been the most wonderful thing having a family. And I don't want women to miss out on that. And I want them to know that they can balance both. You can have a career and you can have a family. And hopefully those are the topics we're going to talk about. How to do both, how to have it, and don't miss out on it because kids are wonderful. The challenge for sure.
Yeah.
A challenge for sure, but I can't imagine, not having them. And I just hear so many women today talk about young girls. I've had one-on-one conversations with them where they just feel like, you know, it's not for them. They can't do it. So they're going to put it
Mm.
on the back. And I want to kind of get that conversation rolling again that you can have both. If you if you just have to have your career in a certain way. You just like I work from home now. I My office AbbVie is in Irvine, but I work. My shift is 11 to 7, so I'm able to be there for Ethan. I pop out in the middle of the day to go pick him up from school, but I still have an art director position at AbbVie, and you know there are ways to make that happen.
So, have you seen the return to work mandates in your industry, or has design been kind of left out of that?
Yeah, so in
Return
my
to office, I should say. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the creatives at my office have different schedules. Um, some of them go in 2 to 3 days a week and then work from home. And then some of them just work from home entirely, such as myself. I've always worked remotely from AbbVie from day one. I've been there 5 years now. They started out as just a small client, and now I've been there for 5 years. I've kind of gradually taken on more work over the years, but I've always worked remotely, and they've been really great about working remote. Um, yeah, there's a lot of people on my team that work remote or have varied schedules. And I think as a creative, that's one of the things that you can do. I will say when you first start out in your 20s and 30s, The best thing to do though is be in the office when you're a newbie, is you want to be involved in everything. You want to be in those meetings. You want it. So when you're starting out, I put in my 10, 15 years of being in the office 9 to 9, many, many hours.
Yep.
But as a mom, when I had Ethan, I totally shifted out of that. I had to shift out of that and find a new way to work within the creative field. And I was able to do that and work remotely and then have my own clients. So for the past 10 years, I've worked remote, multiple clients with a couple designers helping me, and now just myself at AbbVie. But I think as a creative, you definitely have multiple options. And that's one of the nice things about the industry that I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Rebecca's website will be down in the description, so make sure you check it out if you want to learn from her or you want to hire her for your branding. Rebecca is great to work with, so do check her out. And thanks for watching. And Rebecca, any closing remarks from you? It's been great having you
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, just thanks for having me on. Hopefully some of that was interesting to some people, or hopefully that was helpful. And it's been great connecting with you. And hopefully you're doing really well and being successful. And we miss you here in the States. And hopefully we'll get together again someday in
Yes.
person.
And yeah, we'll definitely let us know how the side projects go, and if you get the any of them out the seminar or yeah, the
Yeah,
other the women's group, you just let us know. We'd love to have you back on and talk about those
yeah,
things.
yeah. Once I get that going, fingers crossed.
So. Thanks for joining us today. And if you have any questions for the guests, pop them into the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe.